Hello.
Is everyone warm?
It is cold in here. That's
Awesome. Suraj is about to deliver a masterclass in performance marketing. I think we've talked a lot about brand marketing today, so going to switch gears slightly. And my goal for this session is for everyone here to walk away with one or two tips that they can bring back to their organization to drive immediate improvements in performance. So excited to get into it. And Suraj, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You have a fascinating title and journey into the role that you're in. So yeah, let us know about your story, even starting with college. You were telling me about what you majored in at school.
Yeah, so nice to meet everyone. I'm Suraj. I'm the Director of Performance Marketing at Dr. Squatch. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Squatch is a men's personal care brand. We're mostly famously known for our natural soaps for men, which is an interesting space to enter, considering the natural category is not typically seen as like a male category. So that's sort of where the company's like main disruptive element came from. And then we also pushed into other categories like deodorant, lotion, hair care, basically trying to be the go-to men's natural brand. So I've been with the company for about 4.5 years now. My background is, as Olivia was alluding to, is a little different from typical marketing. I went to film school actually in New York. So I came from a more creative-oriented background, and then I worked at a performance marketing agency called Tube Science, which is based here in Los Angeles. And there is where I really learned my performance marketing chops in the creative strategy side. And then, kind of using both the, creative background and the more analytical background I took away from the performance agencies to, join Dr. Squatch and build up this performance marketing capability for them.
Awesome. And you focus, so I've been seeing the rise of this role, Director of Performance Marketing Creative specifically, so having a creative team specifically dedicated to growth marketing and acquisition. Tell me about where that fits into the org, what your organization and your team looks like, and how you perhaps partner with other folks in the creative and brand teams.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're starting to see a rise of performance testing and really creative testing, on a larger scale, as sort of building up the growth engine for the business, versus the classic brand style. And the way I really look at this role is actually creative from the ground up versus creative from the top down. I think in sort of your traditional marketing world, you have people who are sort of creative directors, writers' rooms, where it's more directed from above, and you're sort of trying to push something down below. Whereas from our testing standpoint, we're doing a lot of small testing, a lot of micro testing, like trying to create a lot of assets at a very low cost, and then seeing what the consumer actually responds to. So, looking at, we'll put out 100 ads, what are the top 5 ads that people are really into, right? And then using that to iterate and optimize. And then that way you're not actually spending a lot of money on a single campaign, you're actually spending a little bit of money, and then over time you're actually spending more on what's actually working through this testing apparatus. So I'd say from at Dr. Squatch, we really started heavily we had a great YouTube video that was our sort of big brand moment in 2018 with, I don't know if you're familiar with, the guy's name is James. He's a bearded guy. He's like, your soap is shit. Really aggressively going after the male audience. But then, from then on, we started shifting more into, small scale testing, remixes with that video, using UGC, actual talent, testimonials, and then really trying to figure out, what is actually driving people to pull out their wallet and purchase. Our attribution is very quick, it's like a one-day click. So, how do you actually convince people to buy, in the moment after watching a video, and using those test results to scale further.
Yep. It's so relevant. I was in growth marketing at Netflix, actually. This is a homecoming for me of sorts. I was at Netflix from 2016 to 2019, and we were running tests all over the world. We were running experiments, and we were looking for step change performance improvements in terms of acquisition. And we would optimize the hell out of our media buys. We would look for wins in terms of audience and optimization and bidding inside of Meta. And then I can't tell you the specifics of the experiment, but we changed something in the creative template. Our acquisition cost went down immediately by 50%. And so I've just seen the impact on what this level of testing and the impact can have in the org and in terms of acquisition costs. And I think the big question is, like, how do you get enough creative going in terms of that engine? Like, and I can't see anyone, but like, show of hands, how many of you feel like you have enough creative? All right, we have a couple down here.
Few people.
How do you, what does that operational engine look like to make sure that you are able to constantly be testing, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so I think the way like a creative team, especially in the performance world, really works is twofold. And I think this kind of goes across like all other types of creative teams, but I think particularly with performance, like this is extremely important to master. So the first part is just operational speed, just being able to create creative very quickly and creating a frictionless world in which that occurs. So for example, like with my team, we are really focused around, to be honest, it's quite simple. It's like we just have like a Monday work board that we work off of, and then basically every idea that we try and want to test just is one line in that Monday work board. And then we have people who are assigned who are the editors, people assigned who are the writers, project managers. And then we just use that like every week. We're just adding in new rows to that thing and pumping out stuff. And the best part is it's very frictionless. Like, everyone on the team is able to see what's going on. Everyone on the team is able to know what they're assigned to. So creating that frictionless operation is very important. Like I've seen companies, I've been at agencies where you had like 20 stages of review on an asset, and it was like, like the decisions that were being made by, the 20th review had nothing to do with the performance of the creative. It was just, move this one pixel to the left. And it's like, do we really need to waste our time? Why not? Let's just launch it and find out if it's going to work or not. The other half of beyond the operational side is just having, the right type of creative people. People who, I call it in our hiring process, the cocaine level energy. That's what I really look for when I hire people. It's just like, are you bursting with ideas? Are you going to constantly trying to come up with something or trying to twist the conversation? Or are you even sarcastic in conversation where things sort of emerge? So I think having those types of people to really fuel the engine, and then having the operational ability to then therefore execute quickly and rapidly. I think those two things are really essential for making that engine work.
I was looking at the Facebook ads in the ad gallery for Dr. Squatch, and I can't believe some of them got through approval. So that tracks for me in terms of the types of folks you're looking for. Risk taking. It sounds like you err on the side of taking a swing instead of kind of the conservatism in terms of holding it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, Dr. Squatch is one of those brands where you can take those risks. Like, I'm very fortunate to work at a brand that is a little edgy, likes to, we make ball jokes all the time, in our creative. It's great. I love writing that stuff. I think it would make other people cringe, it's other companies. And to be honest, it's not for everyone, okay? Like, if you have a more put together, very conservative brand, then definitely do not try what I'm going to suggest to you. But, it's comes with the territory, I think, of working at Dr. Squatch.
You guys ran a Super Bowl ad very early in the brand's life. Like, tell me a little bit about that and when it happened and how it came together.
Yeah, I think that was in 2020, I believe. So we ran, 2021. It was just like one big swing. We had never really explored TV, and I think we had a very successful year. The margins were fantastic, the profitability was amazing, and so we were just like, why don't we just go for this moment, this like big brand moment? We took a lot of elements in that ad actually from what had worked, in prior, like on YouTube, on Meta, those types of ads that we had seen like real success and real engagement actually. And the best part about testing in this sort of D2C world is just getting those numbers, like what is the view rate, like what is the click-through rate, like you can really optimize a creative using that information. And so we're like, let's just apply that to this massive ad buy for the Super Bowl. And it was great. And obviously you see that spike in your numbers, right? Whenever you run a TV spot. But I think the other thing, especially for a brand like a more nascent brand, is that it gives you some sort of legitimacy actually to have a Super Bowl ad. So when it came to doing partnerships in the future with like Disney and Warner Brothers, like they saw that, okay, we had this massive Super Bowl ad and it was really great, especially for this like small D2C brand, like being able to get those partnerships were, it was essential, to sort of have that credibility, via Super Bowl ad.
Awesome. Tell me about some learnings from Dr. Squatch in terms of what has worked over the years, what makes for effective creative.
Yeah, it's always it's a changing target in my book. But yeah, I would say very early on, we were very comedic focused. Sort of this sort of gotcha guy who's like we're shitting on body wash, we're shitting on synthetic chemicals, we're using that type of messaging very early on. I think we started then seeing a shift probably a couple years later, or about a year later, where your creative does fatigue on the platform, right? You can try to run the same message over and over again, but eventually it hits who it needs to hit. You've already hit that audience, a million times. The frequency is crazy. And so you do need to sort of think about, especially in the growth capacity, how do you expand, right? Brand-wise, I think staying consistent, as a brand is important, but I think for growth, you're trying to find out who's like that next customer kind of outside, of your current purview. And so, then we started shifting into more female-oriented angles, where it was like, girls who are attracted to guys who smell the product. And so we were trying to find out, okay, what are these other use cases, right, for the product, that go beyond just like a guy using it, right? So it's a gift, from a girl to a guy, right? Or in other cases, we were trying to focus maybe more on the origin of the brand, right? Like we had a very successful ad with our founder. Like we just interviewed our founder, and it's kind of great. He's not the most charismatic guy on camera, but it works. It's great because he feels genuine, right? He's a real dude, like trying to make a difference. And so, we've sort of found like these different swim lanes, as we sort of refer to them, of just different categories of creative that really help expand, the audience and find, new targeting, for that creative.
And how do you know what works?
The numbers, straight up the numbers. So, which is great, with especially with platforms like Meta and Snap, TikTok, any sort of digital delivery. It's like, you get those results very quickly. The moment the ad goes out, you're able to see, what was the purchase rate, the click rate, view rates. You're just using all that information to sort of determine what success looks like.
Yeah. So this might be a potentially unanswerable question, but one of the challenges, I was in your shoes as a growth marketer at Netflix, and just this is an example of, you would create these different types and these different concepts of assets. We had single titles that we would promote and leverage to drive acquisition. We would do like multi-title spots where we're bundling together quarterbacks and receivers and doing like a sports bundle. And then we would have assets that advertise like the breadth of the service in terms of the breadth of content. And you can see what Meta's spending on. We're spending, decent amount of our growth budget on the major channels like Meta and Google. Could see where they were spending as like a proxy for what was working, but how, like, in a world where they're getting multiple messages, how do you know the right like combination of creative to run? Because you can only see how a single asset performed. You can't actually see whether that user got 8 messages before that, and that just happened to be the last ad that they saw before they signed up.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very difficult question, actually, right? Because, like oftentimes these platforms are not able to tell us like, what the single user journey looks like, right? But there are sort of ways that, we've sort of segmented our audience based on their exposure to the brand. So, for example, like we have, top of funnel campaigns where it's like people who've just never received, impression, right? And those are supposed to be, the coldest of audiences. Then we experimented a bit with like video view audiences as well, like people who have watched like a certain percentage of the video, they get hit by a slightly different type of creative. And then obviously we have, sort of your retargeting, people who've visited the site, right? They're going through a certain different experience. So I think using those segments, you're able to kind of figure out like a profile of just like how exposed people are to your brand, and then you can craft creative. And the best part with the platforms is like, you directly target them, using that segment.
Awesome. I'm going to switch gears slightly. You guys are an omni-channel brand. You're no longer D2C. This gets a lot more complicated. You're selling on Amazon. You're selling in retail. How do you, in that world, how do you understand what works? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about the Haus test that y'all are running.
Yeah, no, this is great, and yeah, it's amazing that the work that you guys do at Haus, for us, it's like, when you have so many different channels like Meta, Snap, YouTube, right? Initially, a lot of our focus was on one-day click performance, right? It's like people clicked on the ad, they had to purchase within 24 hours, and then therefore you could sort of extrapolate the idea that okay, like that ad that they last clicked on was the source of the purchase. But now we have other platforms like Amazon, right, where maybe potential people are not, some people will watch an ad, right, and then they don't necessarily purchase, within the 24 hours period. So how do you account for that fact, or the fact that we're in retail as well? And so a great thing that we're doing with Haus is currently this incrementality test, where we're doing a geo holdout on certain regions, turning off our meta spend, and then seeing how that affects, like, for example, Amazon, right? One concern is like, if we reduce our spend on Meta, how is that going to affect other channels, right? To give you guys context, Meta is like our biggest spend channel right now. So it's kind of great, with these sort of tools and these measurements, and also seeing the uptick, in the I forget what it's called, post-treatment window. You're seeing the actual lift of how you're spending your media dollars.
Yeah, I used to think that if you're advertising your brand and it has a click-through set to go to your site, that you're going to drive .com sales. And I can't, after running a lot of these experiments, I can't believe how wrong I was. Like, consumer behavior is pretty firm, where if someone is trained to buy on Amazon, they're going to buy on Amazon. And nothing you do to try and move them into D2C is really going to happen. And so if you're not looking at the lift in Amazon sales or in retail sales, you're just missing a huge part of the picture in a way where you might be overspending, you might be underspending, but you don't know, because you don't know how much of the returns are actually happening on other channels outside of D2C. So that's the test you're referencing, where we're trying to figure out how much, after being exposed to Dr. Squatch on Meta, how much of that purchase is actually taking place on .com versus in Amazon, which I think is going to be a huge unlock.
That's going to be a huge, exciting discovery, so to speak. Also, it's interesting too, people think, it's like you see the ad, maybe if you don't purchase online, you go to a store, right? And then, you recall the ad, and then you buy the thing. It's like, I don't know if it necessarily works that way completely. Like, I think, actually an interesting thing when we went into retail too is like, the idea of like, retail and packaging as like an ad in and of itself, right? Just like that in-person experience is almost as important as, us running ads. And in fact, it could work vice versa, right? Where maybe someone has actually seen the product and we give them the offer, right? Maybe D2C has like a special bundle or a special limited offer for that retail buyer who didn't purchase in the store. Also, like, one big thing for the business too right now is like trying to figure out how do we differentiate, two channels, right? You have retail, appealing to certain buyers. D2C appeals to certain buyers. But then when you have people who can buy in both, right, maybe they just choose to buy in retail. Maybe they don't choose to buy online too. So, a big part of growth for Dr. Squatch now is like differentiating the channel, like offering limited SKUs. We did a partnership with Minecraft and Flaming Hot Cheetos very recently, right? Sort of offering those fun, like, limited edition things that you can't really get in the retail experience. So, hopefully, if you did buy retail and you see an ad for, something like that, maybe you enjoyed the product, right, in your first experience, like maybe you will buy online, and then that way, you're sort of more integrated in, like, the Dr. Squatch community, through your online purchase.
Tell us about the Cheetos partnership. The theme of this, I feel like this whole day has been partnerships. Tell us about Cheetos, and I'm very excited to hear how you guys partnered with them.
Yeah, you can buy it right now. Actually, it's online. We did a collab with Flaming Hot Cheetos, and we introduced it uses like Jimmy red cornmeal and some sort of spice in the soap itself, and you can actually shower with it. It is, you can legit shower with it. Don't worry, it's not going to burn you or anything. It's a pretty cool bar, but I think Cheetos is just like one of those fun, recognizable brands, and we've been doing a lot of partnerships and collaborations with a lot of just like fun brands that we think just vibe with our products, and we find weird ways to make the soap really relevant. It's this Cheetos bar is like very hot red. It looks exactly the same color as a flaming hot Cheeto. So yeah, I mean it's always fun, and I think our fans of the brand really look forward to these kind of odd limited edition partnerships.
And how about Minecraft?
Yeah, Minecraft was huge. Minecraft was about a couple months ago, and gamers and has always been like one area that, as a company, we want to unlock. We ran Halo a long time ago, and it did really well. But for some reason, we never revisited gaming. But yeah, we did a partnership with Minecraft, and that was like one of the most explosive partnerships we've ever done. Sold out, in just 3 days, pretty much. All our Minecraft bars. But yeah, like stuff like that. When you really tap into a partner who is really relevant to your audience, or even kind of like on the corner of the audience, like with Minecraft, we're obviously going after gamers, but that covers a massive spectrum of customers, right? It could be parents of kids who play the game. It could be people who played the game and maybe have continued to do so, or others who have heard of it, or they know someone who has it. So partnerships like that are a really great way of just not only supercharging your revenue in a certain moment, but also trying to find people who are thinking of those those other people in their lives who would love it.
Awesome. I have 2 more questions, then I'll kick it over to some other folks for questions. But AI in creative production, I imagine that you're thinking about this every single day. How, if at all, are you leveraging AI in your role? What do you trust AI to do, and what is your limit in terms of like telling the Dr. Squatch story?
Yeah, AI. I don't think about it every day. I think about it maybe once every 2 weeks, but no, it's a great question. I think, and especially in the creative side, it's always an interesting question. To what extent do you use AI? And from my standpoint, actually, on the writing side, we don't really use AI too much on the writing side. We've done it. I think as the previous or one of the earlier panels mentioned, like for just quick ideation and inspiration. But I think like one thing that we really like in our ads and a lot of our copy is just like subtext, trying to find like what is kind of below the surface. And a lot of that is a human experience, right? Is like, you say something kind of sarcastically in a way, and like you're sort of implying something. Like one of my favorite lines of copy that we've written was something like, "My wife's boyfriend loves this soap." And so, you have to think about it for a second, right? But then it's like, oh, okay, what's like the implication? And so like we love like those kind of like moments where we can kind of like make you do a double take. So I think, with AI, at some point, we do need to introduce like sort of that more subtextual element, I think, like where it'll be really powerful for a brand like us. We use it also in other cases, like for any sort of visual effects work. Like I think the industry is using AI for a lot of that type of stuff, and then also like voiceovers in creative, like using AI has been game changer, especially for audio clips and things like on social platforms.
Awesome. In a world where a lot of D2C brands are struggling, Dr. Squatch is standing out in really like bucking that trend. You all are thriving. Like, what do you credit that to, or what do you think makes you all different right now in this very challenging time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I have an easy answer for that. I think having a good calendar, year-round calendar, I think is very essential. So like ensuring that you're building marketing moments frequently and with the right attention to what's going to expand on your audiences has been critical. And I think just the art part is just being able to move fast and have processes and the people to just keep the engine going and keep the inspiration flowing ultimately at the end of the day.
Awesome. All right, I have one more question, then we'll turn it over. What does your channel mix look like, and how does creative differ? And are there more similarities than differences? How are you thinking about scaling this operation and this engine, knowing that different channels require different types of assets?
Yeah, so we are mostly indexed on Meta. I would say probably 60% is Meta. Inclusive Instagram, Reels, everything. The other areas are Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube. Kind of as they're actually approximately the same, like co-equal channels in terms of spend. In terms of the platforms, we kind of view creatives and also the experience of the user just differently between those. So with Meta and Snap, it's something where you're really going to see your friends, and an ad is kind of something that just happens to kind of pop up, while you're in the midst of that. And so we need, certain types of creatives that can really, stand out, or even you have to voluntarily, take your time, away from, your friends to view an ad creative on those platforms. Whereas TikTok and YouTube, they are more YouTube centric, they're more video centric. And so they are, people are going, as a destination to actually watch video and be actively, what they're going for a topic, right? And so, our ad is definitely invading that sort of experience. On TikTok, it's a little better. You do have a lot of organic, social, paid social types of creatives. YouTube, I think it is more of this 5-second thing that you have to kind of get over. But I think at the end of the day, regardless of the platform, the goal is the same. It's let's just create a hook that's exciting, get someone to pay attention, and then give them the right information and entertainment about the product that they want to convert eventually.
Awesome. Yeah, we run a ton of experiments at Haus. We help companies measure ROI through incrementality, and I just can't tell you how we see step change improvements in performance when folks start really sharpening their pencils on creative. There are only so many levers in terms of media buys. There are only so many channels you can buy. Really what it comes down to is investing in scalable growth engine where you can actually continue to have assets and they're fresh and relevant. So that's my advice to folks, is to think through how you can get more swings out into the world in terms of trying new things. All right, with just a minute or two left, any questions for Suraj? I see one right in the middle here.
My whole career has been focused on brand equity building in the long term. So listening to you, my mind is but what about loyalty? And what does that mean? And how does that tie together? So I'm very curious, how do you work with the person who's focused on longevity and brand equity, and how do you tie the two together, especially when you're pumping out so much content and it just seems quick, fast, in a hurry?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I sort of view it as two different sides of the coin, right? On one end, we do have, we actually have a pretty robust brand team now, who we work as a counterpart to us, and they're really focused about, the core message of the company, right? They're really thinking about who is the central customer, and what is that experience like for that customer, right? To be in the Squatch world, what are the assets that they're seeing? What are the visuals? Our social page is basically run by our brand team, whereas my team's focus is more on just what is that edge case customer, the customer who hasn't quite subscribed to our core brand message, but maybe there's a use case for them to eventually subscribe to that message. So it is an interesting game to play, right? Where it's on one side, you're sort of playing in this world where people are very down with your brand, right? But on this other side, it's you need to kind of convince these newer people who maybe already been exposed to your brand and maybe didn't quite resonate with it directly, but you do see that there's some potential with those audiences, and to bring them into the fold. Yeah, they do actually, to an extent. Yeah, we never want to really lie about our brand ever. We do want to stay true to what the product is, kind of our humor. I think to an extent, we do like to keep that in every asset, regardless. But I think, in terms of like casting, for example, or like the types of people that you show, or even like the scenarios that they're in, like where the product might be relevant, maybe it is a little different than what we've typically shown, in our main brand channels.
Brand marketers have a very difficult job because I've seen this where your job is to create demand, and then you have performance marketing, which is to collect on that demand. And your job is to make the performance marketing more efficient, and it's almost impossible to measure. And so we run controlled geo experiments where we will just say, hey, we're going to try a brand campaign. We need to fill the funnel so that these performance efforts can like be that last touch to influence someone and get someone who is maybe considering over the edge. But like, you need to know the brand, and you need to at least have a perception of it before this ad works on you. And so really the one way we've been able to do that and help folks measure upper funnel efforts is to say, do this in this set of markets representing maybe half the US for 2 months. And we're going to observe, and we're going to watch how these markets behave over time with both the brand and the performance, versus just looking at the performance, because the performance is always going to look like the most efficient media, and then the dollars keep flowing, and then you end up with this problem where you don't have any new prospects. So I was moderating a private roundtable earlier, and they were talking about influencer, affiliate, and I think like local activations, and I was like, those are all the things that are impossible to measure. So it's challenging, but you do need both. And I think these efforts are only successful if you have successfully built a brand. All right, I said I wasn't going to go over time, and then we did. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.